What if Hollywood's biggest heartthrob was hiding the greatest love stories never told? Rock Hudson, the face of classic masculinity, lived a life full of secrets, passion, and silent risks. Behind closed doors, he shared hidden relationships with other gay actors, stories the public was never meant to hear. Today, we uncover the names, the rumors, and the truth he took to his grave. Let's begin. Rock Hudson was born Roy Harold Sherrod Jr. on November 17, 1925, in Wetka, Illinois. He rose from humble beginnings to become one of Hollywood's most iconic and beloved leading men of the 20th century. With his striking good looks, towering 6'5" frame, and magnetic screen presence, Hudson embodied the classic American matinee idol. Yet behind the glittering image of success was a man who struggled with personal secrecy in an unforgiving era. Hudson's early life was marked by adversity. His father, a mechanic, abandoned the family during the Great Depression, leaving his mother to remarry a man who adopted Roy and changed his surname to Fitzgerald. After a stint in the Navy during World War II, Hudson moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. Despite having no formal training, he took on various jobs, including working as a truck driver, all the while auditioning for film roles and sending headshots to studios. His break came in 1948, when he was signed by talent scout Henry Wilson, who rechristened him Rock Hudson, a name forged from the Rock of Gibraltar and the Hudson River, meant to evoke strength and dependability. Under Wilson's guidance, Hudson underwent elocution lessons, acting coaching, and grooming to refine his image. His early roles were minor, but his undeniable screen charisma quickly captured public attention. By the early 1950s, he was cast in more prominent roles, culminating in breakout performances in films like Magnificent Obsession, 1954, All That Heaven Allows, 1955, and Giant, 1956, where he starred opposite Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean. His performance in Giant earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, solidifying his status as a top-tier Hollywood star. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, Hudson became known for his versatility, shifting between melodramas and light-hearted romantic comedies. His on-screen chemistry with Doris Day, especially in Pillow Talk, 1959, Lover Come Back, 1961, and Send Me No Flowers, 1964, charmed audiences and made the pair one of the most beloved screen duos of the era. Hudson's clean-cut image, coupled with his affable personality and good humor, made him a favorite among fans and colleagues alike. Beyond romantic comedies, Hudson also showcased his versatility with darker and more dramatic roles. He appeared in films like Seconds, 1966, a psychological thriller directed by John Frankenheimer, where Hudson portrayed a man who undergoes a mysterious procedure to change his identity. These types of films revealed the depth of his acting talents and his willingness to experiment with more complex characters. In the 1970s, Hudson transitioned to television, where he enjoyed continued success, most notably starring in the mystery series Macmillan and Wife from 1971 to 1977. Even as the roles offered to him began to dwindle with age, his legacy as a film legend remained secure. As Rock Hudson's career continued to flourish, he and his agent Henry Wilson worked tirelessly to maintain a carefully constructed public image. Behind the glossy facade of his success, Hudson's personal life, specifically his homosexuality, remained a closely guarded secret. In the 1950s, when Hudson was at the height of his fame, maintaining such a secret was crucial, not only to his public persona, but also to his professional opportunities. Hollywood in the 1950s was known for its deeply ingrained homophobia. The studios, the media, and even the public had little tolerance for actors whose private lives deviated from the straight-laced heterosexual ideal. For Hudson, as for many others of his time, his personal life was an aspect to be concealed at all costs. In 1955, the threat of Hudson's homosexuality being exposed became a real and immediate danger. Confidential magazine, notorious for its scandalous celebrity exposés, threatened to publish an article that would reveal the truth about Hudson's sexual orientation. This posed a grave threat to his career, as any such revelation would likely end his leading man status in Hollywood. In a desperate attempt to stave off the exposé, Henry Wilson, who had guided Hudson's career since its early days, took a controversial step. Wilson, ever the shrewd and resourceful agent, responded to the threat not by directly addressing Hudson's homosexuality, but by diverting the magazine's attention to the personal lives of two other clients of his, Tab Hunter and Rory Calhoun. Wilson leaked embarrassing details about the two men. He revealed that Calhoun had spent time in prison, and that Hunter had been arrested at a party in 1950. Scandalous details that were likely to overshadow any potential exposé of Hudson's life. This distraction tactic was, at least temporarily, effective in delaying the publication of the confidential article, buying Hudson the time he needed to protect his image. Despite Wilson's efforts, the truth about Hudson's homosexuality was widely rumored within Hollywood circles. Several of Hudson's colleagues and friends, some of whom were among the most famous names in Hollywood, later confirmed that they were aware of his sexual orientation. Julie Andrews, Mia Farrow, Elizabeth Taylor, Susan St. James, and even the legendary Audrey Hepburn all knew about Hudson's secret. But they kept it quiet, fiercely protecting him from the public eye. Many saw this as a tacit agreement among Hollywood's elite to safeguard their colleague. A sentiment that was likely grounded in both genuine affection and the recognition that the industry demanded secrecy in matters of sexuality at the time. Carol Burnett, another close friend, was similarly protective, and the fact that these stars chose to maintain Hudson's secret speaks volumes about the pressure and fear that pervaded the Hollywood of that era. The aftermath of the confidential threat. Hudson's personal life was put under even more scrutiny. As part of his strategy to throw off the media and distract from the potential scandal, Hudson agreed to marry Phyllis Gates, the secretary of his agent Henry Wilson, in a highly publicized wedding. Their union was intended to serve as a shield against the rumors about his sexuality, but it quickly became a subject of great public interest. According to Gates, the couple had dated for several months before moving in together, and it was only after this time that Hudson unexpectedly proposed marriage. Gates later wrote that her motivation for marrying Hudson was based on love, not the pressure to protect his secret life. This narrative, however, was often contradicted by public speculation, with many suggesting that the marriage was a direct result of Hudson's fear of the impending exposé. The press coverage surrounding the wedding further fueled the myth of Hudson as the ideal leading man. In interviews, Hudson was quoted as saying that his marriage was one of his greatest blessings, presenting a perfect image of domestic happiness and marital bliss. But behind closed doors, the marriage was far from idyllic. 3 years after their wedding, in April 1958, Gates filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty as the reason. In the 1950s, this was a standard reason for divorce, as it allowed couples to bypass the mandatory waiting period before a divorce could be finalized. Hudson did not contest the divorce, perhaps recognizing that this was a necessary step for both his and Gates's futures. The divorce settlement was somewhat generous for the time. Gates received alimony of $250 per week, a sum that was guaranteed for 10 years. She also gained some financial interest in Hudson's independent film production company, Seven Pictures Corporation. However, the drama did not end with the divorce. After their separation, Gates took legal action against Hudson to claim shares in a new film production company he had formed, Gibraltar Productions. This marked the beginning of a series of postmarital disputes, as Gates sought to solidify her financial standing from her time with Hudson. For Gates, the marriage had been a brief and difficult chapter in her life. She never remarried after the divorce, and the legal and emotional complications of her time with Hudson seemed to define her post-marriage years. The end of Hudson's marriage to Gates did little to diminish his star power in Hollywood. However, the personal cost of maintaining such an elaborate facade was immense. As Hudson continued to hide his true self from the public, he also had to navigate the complexities of relationships, in an era when homosexuality was not accepted, let alone openly acknowledged. His secret remained his own, but it was also shared by a select few who helped keep his private life hidden. While the world continued to idolize him as the epitome of heterosexual masculinity, the tension between his public persona and his private truth would haunt Hudson throughout his life, culminating in the eventual revelation of his homosexuality after his death, which served to shatter the carefully constructed image of the man who had once been a quintessential Hollywood heartthrob. Rock Hudson, one of the most iconic leading men of the 1950s and 1960s, is remembered not only for his deep voice, handsome looks, and magnetic screen presence, but also for the double life he was forced to lead as a closeted gay man in a deeply homophobic era. While the studio system marketed him as the quintessential heterosexual heartthrob, pairing him romantically on screen with actresses like Doris Day and Elizabeth Taylor, the reality of his personal life was far more complex. Hudson's relationships with other men, particularly fellow actors who also lived in secrecy, were veiled in discretion, rumor, and coded language. Though much of what is known comes from secondhand accounts, interviews, biographies, and posthumous revelations, a clearer picture has emerged over time of the romantic and sexual entanglements Hudson may have had with other gay men in Hollywood. The following is an exploration of the known, suspected, and rumored relationships Hudson had with other gay actors, focusing on the realities of secrecy, affection, risk, and companionship that defined his private world. 1. George Nader, the most significant known relationship. George Nader, a handsome actor who starred in numerous B-movies and was under contract with Universal Pictures in the 1950s, is widely believed to have been one of Rock Hudson's most serious long-term companions. The two were extremely close for decades, with Nader even becoming the executor of Hudson's estate after his death from AIDS-related complications in 1985. According to various biographers, including Hudson's close friend and biographer Sarah Davidson, Nader and Hudson lived together for periods of time and often traveled together. Though their relationship was never officially acknowledged publicly during their lifetimes, Nader, who was also gay, is remembered for giving up his own career to protect Hudson's. When Confidential magazine threatened to out Hudson in the 1950s, Universal reportedly made a deal. They would allow the magazine to run a story on Nader's homosexuality instead, effectively sacrificing his burgeoning career to protect Hudson, their more valuable star. Nader lived with his partner, Mark Miller, for 55 years, but his bond with Hudson was never severed, pointing to a connection that was likely both emotional and intimate. 2. Mark Christian, the final relationship. Mark Christian was Hudson's last known partner, and the man who filed a highly publicized lawsuit after Hudson's death, claiming that Hudson had knowingly exposed him to HIV without disclosure. Though Christian ultimately tested negative for the virus, he was awarded millions in damages. Their relationship, which began in the early 1980s, reportedly lasted several years. Christian was not an actor of major renown, but he had aspirations in the entertainment industry. His affair with Hudson placed him at the center of one of the most dramatic legal and media storms of the decade. Christian later described Hudson as loving, but secretive, tormented by the need to hide his sexuality. While Hudson was known for being generous with lovers, he was also deeply afraid of being exposed. and Christian's lawsuit brought to light the emotional and legal dangers faced by closeted gay men at the height of the AIDS crisis. 3. Anthony Perkins. Rumored and discreet. There has long been speculation, though never officially confirmed, that Rock Hudson had a relationship with Psycho star Anthony Perkins. Perkins, who was also gay but extremely secretive about his personal life, is said to have engaged in relationships with a number of men in Hollywood, including Tab Hunter and choreographer Grover Dale. A few biographies have suggested that he and Hudson may have had a brief affair, or at least a physical relationship during their early years in the industry, possibly during the 1950s or early 1960s. At that time, both men were navigating careers in a dangerously conservative Hollywood. If they were involved, it would have been short-lived and extremely discreet. Both men were under immense pressure to conform to heterosexual norms, and each played leading men who were often paired with the most glamorous female stars of the era. Still, their similar trajectories and shared circle of acquaintances suggest at least the possibility of a private connection. 4. Jim Nabors. The infamous urban legend. One of the most persistent rumors in Hollywood is that Rock Hudson and Jim Nabors, best known as Gomer Pyle on television, were secretly married in a mock wedding ceremony during the 1970s. The tale, likely originating as a joke that spiraled out of control, involved claims that Hudson referred to himself as Rock Pyle, a riff on Nabors' famous character. The rumor caused such professional distress for Nabors that he reportedly avoided being seen in public with Hudson thereafter, despite the two being friends. While there's no concrete evidence that they had a romantic or sexual relationship, the legend itself speaks to the constant tabloid pressure and cruel humor that surrounded closeted gay stars. Nabors eventually came out publicly late in life and married his longtime partner, but he always denied a romantic relationship with Hudson. Whether they were involved or simply victims of malicious gossip, their names remain forever linked in Hollywood folklore. 5. Tab Hunter. Possibility amid shared experiences. Tab Hunter, a contemporary of Hudson's and another closeted gay heartthrob of the 1950s, wrote openly in his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, about the strain of hiding his sexuality in the golden age of Hollywood. While no confirmed romantic link has been made between Hunter and Hudson, the two occupied a very similar space. Both were tall, handsome, clean-cut leading men, used to sell fantasies to middle America. Hunter had a well-documented relationship with Anthony Perkins and a few others, and there have been rumors in some biographies that he and Hudson may have had a brief romantic connection. But nothing definitive has ever been confirmed. What is clear is that they shared the same pressures, fears, and experiences. As gay men in an industry that rewarded heterosexual fantasy and punished deviation from the norm. 6. Jack Coates, lover turned memoirist. Jack Coates, a man with minor Hollywood ties, is known primarily for being one of Hudson's lovers who later spoke to the press. He claimed to have had a sexual relationship with Hudson in the 1960s, and even described Hudson as lonely and constantly searching for love. Coates' revelations added to the public understanding of Hudson's life behind closed doors. Though critics questioned whether his stories were exaggerated for profit, even so, Coates' testimony aligned with other portrayals of Hudson's emotional vulnerability and his difficulty maintaining long-term monogamous relationships in a world that refused to accept him for who he was. Rock Hudson's affairs with other gay actors, both confirmed and rumored, paint a portrait of a man caught between his public image and private truth. His relationships were marked by discretion, fear, and societal constraints, but also at times genuine connection and love. Though much remains shrouded in rumor, Hudson's story continues to resonate as a powerful symbol of the human cost of enforced secrecy. In the years since his death, the courage it took to live as Hudson did, behind a mask that hid both heartbreak and joy, has been increasingly recognized. His lovers and companions, both famous and obscure, Each played a part in the emotional tapestry of a man who helped define Hollywood masculinity while secretly living a life that defied its most rigid conventions. On the morning of October 2nd, 1985, at approximately 9 a.m., the world lost one of Hollywood's most iconic and beloved film stars. Rock Hudson passed away peacefully in his sleep at his Beverly Hills residence. He was 59 years old. Hudson had been battling AIDS, a disease that at the time was still widely misunderstood and heavily stigmatized, particularly in the entertainment industry and broader public discourse. His death marked one of the first high-profile celebrity deaths from AIDS-related complications, and it sent shockwaves through both Hollywood and the general public, ushering in a new level of awareness about the disease. For many, it was the moment that brought the AIDS crisis into sharper focus, especially since Hudson had long been a symbol of masculinity and romantic allure in American cinema, often playing leading man roles opposite the era's most glamorous actresses. In accordance with Hudson's wishes, no formal funeral service was held following his death. This private request reflected both his intensely guarded personal life and perhaps his desire to spare his loved ones and the public from the media frenzy that his passing would inevitably provoke. Just hours after his death, Hudson's body was cremated in a quiet, unpublicized process. This swift action further emphasized the deeply personal and controlled nature of his final arrangements, consistent with a man who had spent much of his life carefully managing his public image while keeping his private life out of view. Hudson's passing did more than bring an end to a celebrated life. It became a turning point in the history of AIDS awareness. Just weeks before his death, he had made the brave decision to go public with his diagnosis, becoming the first major celebrity to do so. In doing so, he helped humanize a disease that had, until then, been cloaked in fear, misinformation, and prejudice. His courage inspired greater compassion and urgency in the fight against AIDS and led to increased funding for research and treatment. His legacy, therefore, extends far beyond the silver screen, reaching into the realm of public health activism and social change. He was the face of Hollywood's dream, but his real love stories were hidden in shadows. Rock Hudson's secret affairs weren't just whispers. They were quiet acts of courage in a world that refused to see him. If this touched you, hit like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to LGBTQ+ Vibes, where the untold stories of love finally get the light they deserve.